Deadlock is incredible. There is no other way about it. Maybe one of the best games I have ever played. And as someone who would consistently make fun of the MOBA genre and their heartbreaking player base, the fact that I've become so enamored with playing Deadlock personally feels mind-blowing. It speaks to how amazing and well put together this game is, not to mention that it's still an alpha build with potential for so much more. What's to love? It boils down to the various game mechanics which give the game such a signature feel, like the characters and their deeply varied abilities, the shop system that is streamlined unlike any other MOBA out there, with items that can completely alter gameplay, with important picks to counter what the other team is doing. All of such happen to be sectioned into three categories containing a measure of the amount of money invested in each. They give bonuses depending on whether you have health items, weapon items, or spirit items. By the way, spirit is how most abilities deal damage, but some do other types of damage like melee or a weapon. You've got the laning with creeps that drop soul orbs, that ones that you need to collect by getting close, and the other which you need to shoot so you can collect the money and prevent your opponents from stealing it. Something you're actually trying to do to them as well. If you melee kill a troop, the soul is auto collect. You get a shop as well in lane, but the healing is restricted to one of those troopers that drops a medic orb, which does a good amount of healing, but not enough if you're low. But don't go back to base, because if you miss even a single wave, it is devastating for your economy and getting stronger. Something also achieved by jungling through killing NPCs, punching slot machines at the exact interval, and unleashing your inner link as you smash through containers. Leveling up also unlocks character abilities at the start of the match, upgrading said abilities as well. Each have 3 tiers that cost more ability points each tier. You also get stronger with health and damage every level up. Then there's the map, which has dozens of ways of getting around, with vents that stun you if you get hurt immediately after using one, zip lines that have the same stun mechanic, teleporters, veil walls that can be like a one-way mirror, ropes to climb up to the top of tall buildings, tunnels that few characters can access but not if they get shot, all of which can be utilized for the game's movement system that combines dashes and double jumps that cost stamina, plus wall bounces and sliding, which by the way, give you infinite ammo while you do. Also, don't ever hold W or the movement won't work right. There's also the objectives around the map that at first seem dangerous but are slapstick weak with the presence of a single trooper. Hell, you can parry the guardians in lane. There's a mid boss which if killed spawns a crystal that gives 3 extra lives to whoever claims them. You have to heavy melee to claim them. Something so broken the devs would never give a character such an ability. You can't forget the soul jar being a side objective to deliver that gives a bounty of souls that can be favored if your team has a money deficit, but the carrier can't use abilities and will drop the urn if they get meleeed. Oh, speaking of that, the melee system is phenomenal, where you can get light or heavy melees that deal actual worthwhile damage. So the way you stop every lane from being Fight Club is you use a parry, and if the enemy's melee attack collides with your parry, they get a hefty stun and a front row seat to you caving their skull in with your own melees. But be careful, because if you parry and don't block a melee attack because there wasn't one or the enemy purposely missed, you can't parry for a few seconds, so your opponents can wallop on you. Also, fun fact, you can parry specific character abilities, and do you see the point I'm trying to make here? Holy god, there's so many things that you'll run into in your first game, because once you do the tutorial and play in the sandbox, it will be 0 to 100. Unless you do Street Brawl, but I think that's an ungodly way to be introduced to Deadlock. And honestly, I didn't even cover everything about the game. How certain characters can scale various stats with Spirit, or how the slot machines and jungle creeps give you unsecured souls that drop if you die, or the 2 massive bridge buffs that spawn every 5 minutes, or how all of the ways destroying objectives interacts with the world. And I'm going to stop the bit right here, because if my point hasn't been proven, then I don't know what to do. Deadlock is an incredible game, but my god, is it one of the most complicated games I have ever played. I know more sophisticated games exist, and a lot of Dota fans will scream that Dota 2 is a much more complex MOBA, and I don't want to get in the middle of this debate. What I will say is that from my understanding, Dota's complexity may be deeper, but Deadlock's is broader. And the main worry I have for the success of Deadlock when it officially releases is that this wide breadth of complexity will make attracting a diverse audience tricky, more so to retain said players that give it a shot. Because one has to ask, who is this game for? It falls into the ongoing saga of breeding a hero shooter with another genre, something that I thought had reached its conclusion with Valorant. But nope, here we are. I think the reason why I believed that is because in the previous hero shooter hybrids, The genre that was being integrated with it took the front seat regarding game design. Apex Legends started out with only 8 legends to pick from that had mostly very basic abilities, like an area scan, or running faster, or artillery. Each legend had 3 abilities: a passive, one on a short cooldown, and an ultimate that had a long cooldown. That was the only hero shooter part. The rest of it was all your typical battle royale. Of course, the game had other groundbreaking elements, like respawning dead teammates and the revolutionary ping system, but those had nothing to do with the hero shooter genre. Valorant took the concept of Rainbow Six Siege operators doing one or two exclusive things and expanded on it by adding abilities and ultimates, and then throwing that into Counter Strike with the core gameplay loop of buying items every round that involves taking a bomb to one or two sites to eventually win 13 successful rounds. The thing about both of these cases is that the game blending with the hero shooter already emphasized shooting as the primary way of killing opponents, meaning that anyone interested in the game for the shooting will still have fun, because that remains a core element, and can take you very far even if you don't immediately have a mastery of the abilities. Nowadays, Apex and Valorant have shifted more towards the hero aspect, with many crazier and game defining additions, which is not a criticism, mind you, but a facet that I think the shooter enthusiasts occasionally complain about. On the other hand, people like me who don't want to spend 3 hours a day in aim training embrace new and wacky abilities, because it makes the game more interesting and chaotic. And the ones like Mirage's decoys allow for mind games that can make up for my less than ideal aim. There are 2 points I want to make here. One, Apex and Valorant started much more akin to the genre being blended with heroes. But as time went on, more stuff was added that has included power creep, and naturally, more complexity. Yet another thing fans have criticisms for, and those who may be returning after a while have to adjust to, many choosing instead to just not even try. The funny thing about Deadlock is, despite not even being out yet, the game is already quickly ramping up how convoluted their already severely complicated game is. New characters come out with crazy abilities that then make it so older characters need to be updated just to keep up, like the many massive range buffs for characters or additional CC to their kits. Just you wait until I talk about the CC. So even a character like Wraith, who had the simplest of kits, now gets to literally gamble in the game. We got DraftKings and Deadlock before GTA 6. Then again, is it really a Valve game if there isn't gambling? The other point of that spiel was to say that mixing a battle royale or tactical shooter with a hero shooter was ambitious upon launch for both Apex and Valorant, but makes a lot more sense once you think about it. Now, a hero shooter with a game that possesses absolutely zero shooter elements to begin with, I go back to my question: who is this for? Apex and Valorant were for people who wanted a fresh hot take on two hugely successful genres. If someone likes shooters and has never cared about MOBAs before, are they going to be cool with the fact that probably 80% of the combat they will be in is against random creatures around the map? Will the concept of having to methodically pick your battles and constantly make decisions on how to best optimize your time be too much for someone who only plays TDM and COD? What about the inverse? Are MOBA players going to want to play a game that requires good aim in a fast-paced arena? Will the advanced movement that makes Titanfall 2 players salivate be too extreme to be worth giving an honest effort to learn? On the outside looking in, these questions are hard to answer, and the high level of complexity in all of the various mechanics makes the proposition of even giving the game a try to be daunting. As though MOBA players understand complication, they've never had to practice air strafing before. I came from the first group, as most of the player versus player games I enjoy centrally focused on shooting. I had been aware of Deadlock's existence ever since the Concord fiasco, where I saw the meme that Deadlock had dozens of times more players than Concord, and you weren't even allowed to make content on the game yet. At that point, it was the 4-lane oddball that looked goofy as hell, and I thought to myself it would be another game that I would probably never find myself playing. I did find myself checking in though, especially when it made the transition to 3 lanes, where I made the joke with my friends that after enough changes, the game would just be Dota 3. But it still looked far too convoluted and mobile-like to ever be something I wanted to play. That was until a completely different game indirectly influenced me to change my mind. And that game was Overwatch, surprisingly. I've given a lot of praise for Stadium in my previous videos as a stellar addition to Overwatch, as a more in-depth take on gameplay that amplifies the best parts of what make Overwatch special. mainly the new abilities and upgrades you purchase to create a certain build that might seem overpowered until you remember every one of your teammates and opponents are doing the same thing. It was playing Stadium for a good long while that helps my brain bridge the gap between a basic shooter and a MOBA. That's not to say Stadium is anywhere near as complex as even the most basic MOBA, not even close. Rather, the MOBA elements used in Stadium are simplified and easy to grasp, as well as interact with. Instead of a free flowing game that you need to know how to optimize when to farm jungle and shop during downtime, all of the shopping is done at the start of the round, and the money you make is simply through playing Overwatch. Instead of saving your money for a powerful item, you want to spend all of your money every round, because the items you purchase give all the money back when you sell it, and the items themselves are incredibly basic. This one makes your weapon deal more damage, this one gives you more armor, this one makes your abilities apply a move speed reduction. And just like in MOBAs, a lot of the items are also padded with bonus stats that can sway your decision. I want damage as Tracer, but I need my abilities ASAP to be able to fight, so I'll take this one, which is damage and a cooldown reduction. I already deal high damage as Reaper, but I need to move faster. Oh hey, this one does that after using an ability, and it also gives my high power shotguns more attack speed. Great. Even the few active items, aka gadgets, do some very basic things that make the concept of buying their counterparts in Deadlock make way more sense. I know this is a lot of talk about a game that is not Deadlock, but I promise I'm going somewhere with this. The only reason why I even tried Deadlock was because I felt prepared enough by my time in Stadium, plus the many hours I had watched someone else play it. So there I was, loading into my first match, knowing everything I could, ready to put all of what I had learned to the test. And holy hell, I was as unprepared as ever. It wasn't that I was lost on the map or didn't know how to follow a build I had copy and pasted. I was just simply overwhelmed by what I was supposed to do and when I was supposed to do it. I've come to realize that this is a MOBA thing, but the pressure of being able to ask yourself, what should I be doing right now, and conjuring up an answer quickly, is not something you can learn by playing a slightly similar game or watching someone else play it. And that's not the only thing you have to keep in mind. Remembering when certain things happen on a set timer, as well as knowing when things should happen that change depending on the game flow, requires a vast amount of game sense that I usually laud myself for having, but Deadlock was different. And sure, mobile players will have an easier time figuring this part out, but that still leaves things like the shooting, melee system, and movement for them to have to learn. My whole point is that Deadlock frightened me in a way that no other game has before, and it took so many games to get past that hurdle. The advice I would give to anyone is to just not get overwhelmed, whether it's because you are unsure of what you should be doing at any given moment, or it's nearing the end of the game and everyone is using crazy abilities in a massive team fight. Focus on what you're doing and try to do it well. Who is this game for? I think the answer might be anyone. Anyone who is ready for something new to try, learn, and or master. The game is not designed to satisfy one particular group of gamers. Not the MOBA heads, not the casual shooters, not the not so casual shooters, not anyone in between. Maybe furries, but that's a different conversation. The game has leaned so much into the MOBA and shooter elements that it has become its own game. Apex Legends will always be a battle royale. Valorant will always be a tactical shooter. Deadlock is Deadlock. And I think that is actually high praise. We're in an era where AAA games are pushed out and get shut down in just a few months because while they may be new, it wasn't new in any way that would drive people to migrate from their usual rotation. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that now, more than ever, we as people are loyal and invested into what we already know. Whether it's people going to the same gas station to build loyalty points, watching the same streamer you've been subbed to for years, or someone having a game account with $500 worth of skins sunk into it. The grass has to be greener. And not just greener, but a new shade of green to coax them to the other side. So if you want players to try the game and make the conscious choice to stick around, some things are going to need to be done. And yes, you do want lots of players to stick around, because the worst thing that can happen to this game is that it becomes something casuals would rather watch than play themselves. If you think matchmaking is screwed up right now, wait until the player count drops several thousands and see what happens next. If you want an example of a game that launched with an incredibly wide berth of player types, look at Marvel Rivals. So many people who barely touched hero shooters, or even shooters in general, wanted to get on Rivals, because they could live out their dreams of being their favorite superhero. And that's how the game was designed. I can tell you, balance was not the first priority. It was delivering on the fantasy that came with being the most famous comic book slash movie characters. The game had over 500,000 players when Season 1 launched, which is over 150,000 more than it had on release. Since then, the game remained strong, but the numbers have dwindled a good bit. I can't say for sure why people have stopped playing outside of my own reasons, but I think one of the most stark reasons will be the same one that drives newcomers away from Deadlock. The game becomes way less enjoyable when people figure out how to play it best. And in Deadlock, if someone has mastery over the many mechanics, they are basically playing a whole different game than someone just starting out. And the matchmaking doesn't protect the players just trying to have fun. Now you might say, oh, but Valander, new players will be put into beginner lobbies, and will only face people who know what they're doing after they've played for a bit. And to that I say, tell me you haven't played Deadlock without telling me you haven't played Deadlock. I can't wait to see the rank of this match.
Yeah, it's gonna be rough. He's gonna let us kill her too.
No, don't do it. We gotta pretend we're S. He rolled into it! You know, I'm less excited. I'm more pissed off. Is this so good the game thinks I am?
Yeah, it is.
What the ball? New players are constantly thrown into lobbies that are way too advanced for them, especially if they're trying out the game with a friend who has played already. And suddenly all of those complicated systems I laid out can create a miserable skill gap. If even one person knows how to jungle properly, and they haven't mastered anything else yet, they will almost certainly crush a newbie. If they know how to abuse Celeste's slower gravity and fly around the map, how do you expect someone who is still learning to hold slide after mantling to keep up? That's not even mentioning the rampant smurf slash all account problem, which gets exasperated by anyone making a new account for their friend to not get placed in high elo lobbies their first game. Okay, this video so far has been going all over the place, but now we reach the crux of my thesis. How does Valve ensure that the immense complication is not scaring potential players off? I know I moaned about matchmaking being busted, but that's all about algorithms, and I'm just going to trust that something will be done about it, as well as the smurf issue. I'm praying anyway. As for the game being less fun as knowledge increases, that mainly comes from the fact that the CCs are way too prevalent and need a tuning. Being put into a blender of stuns, silences, and the whole lot is misery incarnate. Stun, 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 silence. I was in that fight for like 10 seconds and I didn't get to do a single ability. Assuming these two issues get resolved, the question remains: how to make one of the most complicated games out there more appealing to someone who may know nothing about MOBAs or shooters at all. Because yes, I do believe the excitement around this game will be high enough to garner a lot of attention, between the hype around Valve's first original release in a while, and the fact that the characters themselves are so well done. Like, I can make a whole video on how the characters in Deadlock are already some of the most intriguing personalities in any hero shooter or MOBA. So there will be, to quote a gaming buzzword, a lot of tourists trying out Deadlock when it reaches 1.0. There are a few avenues to accomplish this, and no, none of them involve dumbing the game down, because that's not going to make anyone happy. I think to start, the game needs an absolutely robust tutorial. Right now it has explanations and a walkthrough of the basics, as well as the sandbox stuff, but I think there needs to be something very thorough. Something equivalent to Dota 2's tutorial, with the several layers of training that you can go through to familiarize yourself with the various mechanics that they will face in chronological order. However, my suggestion for Deadlock is to go even further in both the depth of the tutorials, as well as the requirement to be extended to nearly all that I'm about to lay out. In Dota 2, you only have to complete the sections that teach you the basic controls, how to do combat, the shop, and the important role of last hits. For Deadlock, not only should you have to learn the basics, you should have to be informed about every objective, every step of ending the game, jungling in the various ways, the melee system, the movement, everything. And you should be able to prove that you can do the bare minimum of each system. That means you should be able to time a parry at least once, you should be able to do a wall bounce, plus a double jump to reach a high point, do a sinners correctly, you get the idea. To not get too carried away, that ought to be the end of the required portion before you can access the final phase, But even so, I want there to be advanced tutorials in the game. And I mean advanced. Movement maps that force you to do parkour to succeed, kind of like free run in Black Ops 3. Melee guides that have you 1v1 a bot with only your fists, that involves baiting parries while also doing parries yourself. Jungling speedruns where you need to optimize sliding around for infinite ammo and hitting the weak point. Aim trainer for securing souls. Additionally, there should be a demonstration of the game flow as match progresses, from the lane phase all the way to the late game, as well as what you should be prioritizing at any given moment. When I was learning about the Dota 2 tutorials, something I noticed is that nearly everyone who discussed it online mentioned that doing the tutorials is a good place to begin. However, in order to really grasp the finer pieces, they should find a knowledgeable player to coach them, or look up a YouTube guide. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with learning via outside sources if someone prefers that, but for those who have booted up the game and would prefer to do their education hands on, having developer created tools to do it only makes sense. Hell, add a reward for a character skin, and I'm sure people will be all over it. The final phase of the tutorial should be 2 full games against bots. One time for the bots to be easy, another for them to be more realistically difficult, but manageable for beginners. During these games, helpful hints can be shown to remind the player of the things they learned in the previous sections, and even highlight upcoming events like sinners spawning or the bridge buffs. If you go to fight a walker with no minions, the game can remind you to push the wave first. Or if you get several picks during the late game, a suggestion about mid boss could appear, as a recommendation for a closer. Maybe a new player standing still for a bit, wondering what to do, and the game could suggest clearing a nearby jungle, or sinners. You get the idea. Not only does this give newbies plenty of game time to learn the map and 1 or 2 characters, it has another effect that I think will make the new player experience a lot easier. That being Smurf detection. If Valve implements a system for these 2 bot matches to detect signs that someone clearly knows what they're doing, such as denying every possible soul orb and jungling very effectively, they can start their rank out higher, rather than setting them free on a server full of green players. And even if it is someone's first time playing, if they demonstrate signs of mastery, the game can avoid dropping them in a first timer lobby and maybe start them just a little further ahead. Of course, Smurfs could purposely play bad to try to get around it, but I feel like that could even aid with detection if they go from 0 to 100 in their first real game. I don't really know if there will be a lot of people who disagree with my proposals. Some might argue that many complicated games in the past have had optional, less deep tutorials, and that it isn't fair to people who just want to jump into the game to be forced to play through what might be hours of guides. I can understand such a sentiment, but I also feel like this is the same thing as someone who doesn't want to read the rules before playing a board game, and then complain when they don't understand what is happening. No, you cannot place your settlement there. I am already settled on the adjacent hex. We went over this. But naturally, some people will still think that they are good enough to not need a tutorial, whether that's because they have played MOBAs before or have seen a ton of gameplay already. Or maybe they're a game journalist and can't get through tutorials. To that, I respond by admitting that some people would probably be fine without them. But there is still a huge difference between watching someone else do something and being able to replicate it yourself. Besides, if you are that good, you ought to be able to breeze through the required tutorials anyway. One thing I didn't mention is that when you open the game for the first time and get to the welcome screen, the game should state its complexity outright. No beating around the bush. Be honest that this game has a lot going on and it will take some time to get one's bearings. The one other thing I believe will be crucial for Deadlock's success is actually already in the game, and is probably going to be expanded upon anyway, but still warrants highlighting. Alternative game modes. Street Brawl is low-key a fantastic way to get knowledge about specific items and try out heroes with their varied abilities in constant team fights, something that happens far less in a real game. The only issue with learning with it is the absurd levels of chaos, and like I just said, knowing how to fight with your character is good, but there's a lot more going on in a regular Deadlock game. But what if there was a mode that mixed the current 2 together? That being Street Brawl's faster pace, with fewer players, and the regular mode with a soul economy. The way I see it would be like this. Still 4v4, but there are only 2 lanes that each have their own guardian. Rather than each lane having a walker and base guardians that lead into the base, the 2 lanes would converge and meet at a single, much tougher walker. From there, it is a single lane that leads into the base guardians and patron, who is still defended by shrines, but is already in its second phase, meaning you don't have to wait for the transformation to win, simply killing the final objective one time ends the game. The lane phase would be changed so that no one can leave their lane until at least one guardian is taken, and it would be sped up with frequent waves and faster level ups, where you already start with your first 3 ability unlocks. Once the first Guardian falls, an influx of jungle camps would appear alongside other side objectives to farm souls, and force teams to decide when they are going to farm and when they are going to push for offense or rally for defense. Probably wouldn't work to have something like mid boss, but there could easily be bridge buffs that you fight for, and the soul jar. Hell, you could have new side objectives like a capture zone for bonus souls or buffs. Clearly, some finer details would need to be worked out, and I'm not a game designer, so let me know what you think about this. An alternative version could be 3v3 with 3 solo lanes that combine into 2 walkers that combine into 1 lane into the base. This would be fun for people who miss solo laning, though I'm pretty sure that was removed because it was hard to balance, and this may not be conducive to learning about the game. Still neat though, I think. It might be a touch anticlimactic, but I do believe an immensely robust and required tutorial is the one big thing Deadlock needs to build and maintain a healthy player base. Like I said before, there's already plenty of growing interest in the game, and if it truly wants to state itself as the next line of breakout games in the hero shooter saga, it needs to be as welcoming as ever, and upfront that no matter what experience you might have as a gamer, there will probably be something new to learn. And that's okay. Alongside the tutorial, some alternative game modes will be good for both learning and practicing mechanics, as well as bring a reprieve for those who enjoy Deadlock's combat but are tired of the MOBA elements of the base game. Other than that, I don't have much to say. I continue to enjoy Deadlock very much, even despite how egregious the matchmaking has felt lately. And of course, the power creep of CCs can become frustrating. Despite those things, I absolutely love the characters. I love laning, I can tolerate jungling, and it's so crazily satisfying when you engage in the combat the way the game was meant to be played. So when I give the criticisms that I do, it's because I want the game to be the best it can be, and not another chapter in the failures of AAA games. If the R34 indicator is any measurement, not only should this game thrive, the character skins will have people going more feral than Silver in their alt. Honestly, when it does release, I'm expecting Game of the Year. Thanks for watching. If you like and subscribe, I will personally see to it that Bebop gets removed from the game and replaced by Claptrap from Borderlands. See ya!